Dehancer is a film emulation plugin, and today we're gonna mess around with it for a bit and see what it can do. This will be a sort of hands-on first impressions review, and the shots that I'm gonna work with are from a short film that my girlfriend and I directed back in August. The movie, which is titled 3 Days in Summer, is a coming-of-age drama comedy film about these two students who are taking a physical education summer class with their wacky professor, and things start to go horribly wrong. I won't spoil it, but if that interests you, you can keep your eyes peeled on my Instagram for updates. Now, something worth mentioning is that we shot this film on a Blackmagic Pocket 4K cinema camera, which has a micro Four Thirds sensor. And what's interesting about micro Four Thirds sensors is that they are close to the size of 16mm film. For that reason, I'm going to try using Dehancer to create a 16mm film look rather than the more popular 35mm. And one last thing, Dehancer did provide me with a copy of their plugin to review for this video, but everything that I say is my own honest opinion, both the good and the bad. If you're interested in getting Dehancer for yourself, you can get 10% off by using my affiliate code GALES10 at checkout. Check out the link in the description for more. So that's that, let's get into it. I've got 5 shots here to work with. We've got a wide shot, then we've got a 3 shot. These are our characters. If you've seen my short film, My Neighbor Ed, you might recognize this gentleman here, a shot, reverse shot. And then I've also thrown in a drone shot right at the end. All right, so I've set up a simple color space transform. We've gone from Blackmagic Pocket 4K into DaVinci Wide Gamut, and then DaVinci Wide Gamut into Rec 709, and then everything that we do in between is our color grade. And in this case, all we're gonna do in between is just drop Dehancer and see what we can do. The starting image when you drop it on is very fried. We have a lot of grain. We have weird color casts across the entire image, even in the sky. Of course, I also have to switch it to the color space that I'm working in, but still, it doesn't look that great. I'm actually gonna go ahead and just disable everything. Temperature compensation is something that we'll definitely want to play around with. We're gonna wanna warm this image up significantly. And here we get to choose our film stock. And just by clicking through here, you can see there's a lot of different looks. We even have things like CineStill 800T. I would actually consider using Gold 200 for this. What it's doing is it's bringing our greens just a little bit more warm, and it's also making our colors a little more desaturated. Then when we scroll down, we are greeted with Film Developer. So here we have the ability to boost the contrast, but then you can see that now our mids are very dark. So that's when we would use gamma correction. I'll keep this, honestly, and color boost is nice. It sort of works in the same way that saturation or vibrance does. I'm gonna keep it at 0. I don't wanna make unnecessary changes to little things, just dragging everything down by -2 or +2, and in the end, it just kind of muddies the image. So I'm gonna leave these two alone, and then I'm gonna scroll down to film compression. I'm actually gonna use this to get the natural color back in the sky up here. As you can see, it's very warm and it looks like the color temperature of the clip has been just slid. So by changing this, it makes the sky look a lot more natural and also lets us keep still that orange golden hour hue. And this honestly is looking great so far. And this isn't really simulating film too much because we haven't played around with grain, bloom, halation, all that. Even if I wasn't trying to emulate film, I would probably use this in sort of quick turnaround scenarios or with footage that I'm not trying to spend hours and hours with. Even though it's pushed as a film emulation tool, you don't have to use it that way. You can use it for the colors. And I really appreciate that. So right under compression, we have expand. This just lets us adjust the black point and white point. You can also choose to only affect the luminance so then you won't get sort of oversaturated colors. This is something that I would possibly scroll back to at the end if there were small changes that I wanted to make. For example, once the grade is done, if I wanted to lift the blacks a bit, then I could do that. It's not something that I would want to do halfway through. Now we get to print, and this is fun. Print is where we can see this classic 2383. It's doing something similar to the Gold 200 when I applied it, where it pushed my greens to a bit more of a yellow. I like the yellow look because of the warmth of the scene, but this film takes place in summer, and this kind of gives me the impression that the leaves are starting to die. But instead of doing anything too complicated, I'm just gonna drag down the color temperature. About right here. The trees in the back, they had lost that warmth a bit when I dragged down the temperature slider. But here, we can actually recover a bit of that with this target white slider. I love being able to scroll through, play with all these different sliders. Even though I don't know what all of these things are, I've been able to jump into it and get a look created. That makes it very user-friendly. So as I mentioned before, I want to do 16mm. We're going to start with film grain. I'm going to go to 16mm ISO 250. So my main concern is that since you're watching this video on YouTube and YouTube compression tends to erase grain, because of that, I'm actually going to go drag it just a little higher. Let's go clean 50 right in the middle. If we punch in to our actors here, I like this. Halation. I'm not partial to halation. The main reason for that is because most film doesn't even have visible halation, or at least not to the extent that you see it online. I find that a lot of people overdo halation on digital footage, but let's see how it looks. Because again, for this, we're going for an authentic film look. If we turn up the amount here, I'll toggle it on and off. It adds a nice little warmth glow, especially up in these trees. As someone who was just talking about how I don't like halation, this looks nice. Like, it reminds me of when I would take photos on film and you have just a little twinge of halation, not this overdone halation that I was talking about. I think that looks great. So bloom, we shot this project with a black mist filter. So it actually creates in camera natural bloom. I prefer to do things in camera where possible, and I really like the look of black mist filters, and I don't like having to, in post, sort of having to play around and think, oh, does this look natural? Does this look like I used a black mist filter? The other reason being that I don't want to throw on all these effects, and I just want to use what I need to use to get the look that I want. So now looking at this original, the colors look very, very off. I mean, it looks pushed towards blue, but it also looks slightly pushed towards purple. Let's go ahead and re-enable this. Yeah, that looks much nicer. I really like the way that the light is hitting him here and how that's interacting with that little bit of halation that we did. It makes it look softer and cleaner, as well as the contrast here, just the highlights on his hair and the highlights on her face. It feels very nice. Vignette, sure, you could do a vignette with a mask. You could do it in Dehancer. There's so many ways to get a vignette. If you were curious, it actually gives you quite a bit of control. You can change the aspect ratio and the feather, and it's overall, I would say, easier or at least faster than creating one with a power window. And what I really like is that we have the ability to monitor, so we can actually enable false color. Having the ability to do this is really helpful, especially when we're making changes to exposure and contrast and everything. It's good to be able to see this at the end. So I really appreciate that. We have right here just a global adjustment slider. It would be nice to have a few other global sliders right at the bottom, because I might not want to totally drag down things like grain and halation. I might want to keep those at 100, but dial back some of these other effects. So it'd be nice to have a little saturation slider, global exposure, contrast for finishing touches. The first thing that I've noticed is actually that the halation in Ethan's hair here looks really nice, and it also feels like it's adding a bit of warmth to this actress's face. This image is certainly a lot brighter. So, I mean, it really is as simple as exposure compensation. But I will say, now that we've dragged that up, the clipping here, it's a bit too much. I'm okay with dragging this down a little bit, especially when it means also protecting the highlights. I really like the way that the skin tones look here with the Gold 200 and with the Kodak 2383. So you can see switching to 3513, that's giving us a bit more of a pale skin tone, just for example. His shirt has lost a lot of color. It used to be this very purple shirt, now it looks almost gray. And maybe we'll just bring the saturation back up to get some of that color back. Yeah, I think at 100, it's a very subtle, but there's a bit too much color in the skin at 100, and just pulling it back just a little bit is, I think, a nice balance between keeping the skins not overly saturated, not overly warm, but also protecting the purple of the shirt. And this is a very, very, very nitpicky changes here, but Dehancer makes it very easy to make these little nitpicky changes. So what I'm gonna do now for this shot, I'm going to try and fix the highlights. Unfortunately, this is one thing that I would like to see in Dehancer, is a highlight specific sliders. But it's true that Dehancer is a film emulation program, and being able to pull back highlights or this and that, it's not really related. So it's really just me wanting all these extra features because of how good Dehancer is as an all-around color grading plugin. It honestly just feels like with a few more functions added, it could be a one-stop shop, which I was able to do with the first example, and it's only here now in the second example and trying to look match between the two that I've needed to hop into another node. So back to the correction here, just right here, there's a little smidgen of detail loss. Let's reduce the highlights. So we've been able to recover that detail there. She gets out the camera. You can see right at the end of the clip there, the halation is very noticeable. Now we can move on to the shot reverse shot. First, I'm just gonna start by going into Dehancer and doing everything that we can in there. So we're gonna drag this down, let's call it 0.5. And ultimately we're trying to replicate this level of exposure on her face. So we're gonna bring it up. The issue is the background is just far too overexposed. So again, this is where it would be nice to have sort of a highlight slider or something similar. Ooh, okay, it actually looks nice to pull down the camera correction here. So something like that. And now I'm just gonna deal with these highlights in the back. So I'm gonna do this in the same way that I did before with the highlights in the hair. I like that. We have a lot of light on the left side of the frame, whereas in this master shot, there's not as much, at least on this shoulder that you can see here. I'm gonna add a mask right here, just to drag down some of that exposure. I'm happy with this, and 3, 2, 1, boom. So that is definitely a bit overexposed. Now we're gonna mainly try to match these two together. We have sort of a similar thing as the last one where the light slightly changes. As you can see at the very beginning, just on his leg here, this patch of light is brighter than it is at the end. I'm just gonna go here and we'll try enabling the highlight recovery node that we made before and we'll see how that looks. That does a lot, but it does too much. So I'm just gonna drag down the intensity of this node. Before, after. That's great. I'm happy with these two as the shot reverse shot. I think they match, these two match each other and these two match each other. Comparing the Rec 709 of the drone shot and the master shot, there are very distinct differences. The master has lower contrast. There's a bit more harsh light in this. The light is slightly softer where it's hitting them here, which not as much we can do about that, but we can try. And then the color temperature looks different. For the white balance, I'm just gonna have to eyeball it because neither of them were set quite properly. Right here, I'm ready to drop the Dehancer node in, and then any changes that we need to make, we'll figure it out as we go. First thing, the less diffused light is very, very evident. So that's something that we absolutely are gonna have to tweak a bit. And I'm gonna actually do that first in Dehancer just by bringing down the exposure. It doesn't quite match the master now. It's just a question of the highlights being too bright. So yeah, we can really make the highlights look a lot cleaner. But it's hard to tell if I'm overdoing it, especially on his leg here. It looks a little muted. And so I'm gonna find a middle point somewhere between the two. That feels already so much more natural and organic on his leg. When it's pulled back here, now it matches quite well. But when it's closer up, there's too much going on. I think the halation is too strong. So we want it to be more similar, like more in line with the amount of halation that we have here. I don't want my eyes to immediately see, oh, there's halation applied to this. Definitely, okay, a big change. So I'm happy with this. This is great. Let's watch these shots back to back and see how they blend.